Thank you for joining us again if you tuned in last week, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time today. Whilst the world is currently upside down, we also ended up a little bit sideways last week, but I'm delighted to say that we have ironed out a few little technical issues since then, and I say thank you very much for sticking with us. My name is Meg.
And this is Hardy. It's great to receive so many positive responses from our last week's post, and we're really glad to have you back so we can have a good chat with you about expedition cruises today.
Yes, so we are talking all things small ship and expedition cruising. You may remember that last week we indicated that that was perhaps one of the areas of cruising that we would see rebound soonest and would give us some opportunities as cruising re-emerges.
Well, Meg, I think we're looking great in our expedition parkas. Let's get the tour started, shall we?
Absolutely. So we thought we might touch first of all on how expedition cruising differs from regular ocean cruising. Hardy, what are the major differences that we can talk to about expedition cruising?
I guess the biggest issue is the size of the ships. Cruising usually we associate with larger ships, whilst expedition cruising we're talking much smaller vessels. Expedition ships will carry anywhere between 20, 80, perhaps maximum of 300 passengers. But the major difference between going on an expedition cruise is, of course, the remoteness, the places that expedition ships can go where the big ships can't. We're talking exotic locations, adventure, getting close to wildlife and nature, visiting places without wharves, pontoons or cruise terminals. We're going to lands that are untouched with beautiful beaches, villages that are very off the beaten track, where of course the big ships don't have access. Meg, tell us about some of the destinations that we would promote for expedition cruising.
So as you say, I think the most important thing is to think about places that are away from the busy tourist locations. Automatically, many people would think first of all about the polar regions, the Arctic, of course, and also the Antarctic. But there are lots of other beautiful parts of the world, many of them warmer, such as the Galapagos Islands, the Amazon region, and Borneo, closer to home. And just on our on our doorstep, places like the islands of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, and right here in Australia in our own backyard, the Kimberley, of course, is a very popular destination for expedition cruising. For those of you that might have explored it overland, you'll know how beautiful it is, but to experience the Kimberley by cruising the coastline and moving into some of those beautiful rivers and waterways is something quite spectacular. The other part of the world, as I say, that's right here, close to home is Tasmania. There's some beautiful expedition cruising available around the island state of Tasmania.
And I guess we can add the Maldives and the Seychelles, an area especially attractive for the divers or those that like cruising in warmer waters.
Absolutely.
Who are the expedition operators, Meg?
Well, again, if we think about those that are based here in Australia, think operators like Coral Expeditions, that's based in Cairns, and also True North, based in the Kimberley. And in fact, True North is probably the first of the cruise lines to resume sailing. Just over the weekend, they commenced their first Kimberley cruise in some time. At this point, given that the West Australian border is closed, there are only West Australians on board at the moment. But you know, some wonderful Australian owned and operated expedition cruise lines. In addition to that, you may have heard of other lines such as Pennant, Silver Sea and Seabourn, Aurora Expeditions that launched a brand new vessel here in Australia earlier this year, and Scenic, which has quite a new vessel also. And then there are companies like Lindblad that works very closely with National Geographic, and many of their sailings have a focus on photography and very much getting up close to wildlife and so on. So I guess the other thing to talk about is what people can expect on board and what makes expedition ships quite different to the other ocean-going cruise lines, Hardy.
Smaller passenger numbers means a much smaller ratio between crew and passengers. So perhaps 2 passengers are looked after by 1 crew member. And that makes it a very personalized situation on board, because within a day or 2, the crew will know you by name. And what I really like about that, Meg, is when I go to the bar, they don't only know my name, but they've already pouring the champagne. So that's how well they get to know you on a smaller ship. But you also, of course, get to know the other passengers much better than on a big ship. The standards on board these expedition ships, it's very much the same as on the big ships. So you're not really missing any creature comforts at all. Or even the standard might be higher when you're looking at the cabins, when you're looking at dining options. The focus, of course, is on the destination that you would be cruising to. They have specialist guides on board, like marine biologists, naturalists, and historians. Of course, during the day, you would go and attend a lecture in between lunch and afternoon tea. You would go and listen to someone talk about the destination, talk about the wildlife, and what's installed the next day, of course. And when you're on an expedition cruise, of course, expect the photo opportunities to just keep rolling in. You get so close up and very personal with the wildlife. An amazing way to take the best shots yet. The major difference too is to get on and off the ship. Most ships have got what's perhaps called a marina deck, and basically it's a platform that can lower right down to the waterline, where the zodiacs would come in the morning or when you're due to do your shore excursion. And these zodiacs are specially designed to carry 10 to 12 people, and it is so easy to get in and out. Meg, highlight for many people the great vantage points, seeing the bridge, open bridge policy, which is another great advantage of being on a smaller ship. So day or night you can go up to the crew and chat with them where we're tracking with our course, and often you will be chatting with the captain.
Absolutely, I think that's a huge highlight, and for those of us who've only experienced cruising on larger ships, I think there's often been that expectation that you will be able to visit the bridge perhaps on a special tour, and that may or may not be possible. But to have that opportunity to visit the bridge at any time, to engage with the captain, with the other officers on the bridge, to watch how the ship is sailed, and to be up there with such a great vantage point to see where you're cruising to and what there is to see along the way is a huge highlight for a lot of people.
I was talking about the zodiacs, and it takes me back to my very first expedition cruise going down to Antarctica. 80 passengers on board, and at the bar one night I met a gentleman who was quite not so good on his feet, so he was walking with a walking stick, and whilst we were having a drink and talking, he said he would not go shoreside in Antarctica. And I said, why are you on this cruise if you're not going to plan to go shoreside? And he said, well, his wife was going to book. She was desperate to go down to Antarctica. And because the cost for 1 versus 2 is much the same, he decided to just go along for the cruise. During the course of our trip, the crew absolutely insisted to take this gentleman shoreside. They literally lifted him into the Zodiac. He got whisked away, and he cruised through Iceberg Alley for an hour, just him on the Zodiac with a couple of crew members. And at the end of this little cruising around the bay, they ended up on a lovely beach where it was easy for him to get in and out of the Zodiac, so he could actually put his feet on the Antarctic continent. I found that so amazing. And he certainly found it amazing because he got to see the penguins, he got to say, I've been to Antarctica, and it was brilliant.
Fantastic.
Meg, tell us about your expedition experience. You've been to Antarctica.
I have, and I have to say that buzz of excitement that sort of ripples through the ship at every point that you know there's an opportunity to go ashore. It's just such an amazing experience. No matter where you are, there's a wonderful sense of excitement and anticipation, not quite knowing what lies in wait as you leave the ship and head to the shoreline, or in some cases just cruise within close proximity to the ship and to the mainland. But I'll never forget the most wonderful experience I had. We were sitting at dinner, and I think we'd just finished main course and the plates were being cleared, and an announcement was made from the captain on the bridge. And he said, you know, you can have dessert at any time. What I'd highly recommend you do is head back to your cabins, grab your parkas, and come out on deck or come up to the bridge, because we have whales on both sides of the ship. And that particular night we had humpbacks on one side of the ship, we had orca whales on the other side. And the captain basically said, we're just going to see what happens here. And for the next 2 hours, I think, we followed a pod of humpback whales. At one point, the ship just stopped and we were stationary because this group of humpbacks started bubble net feeding, and it's an experience that I had heard about but had obviously never witnessed before. But these humpbacks went into a feeding frenzy for about 30 minutes, perhaps even longer, and they were literally just off the side of the ship. We could we could hear the noises as they surfaced. The spray of the water was not far from where we were, and you knew it was a special moment because even the expedition team, who have been to Antarctica season after season, year after year, were just so excited by the experience. The wonderful thing was that basically the captain just changed course because there was something to do, and I have to say it was probably the most incredibly exciting night at sea I'd ever had. It beat all other types of entertainment that I'd ever experienced on a ship. And let me tell you, there've been some fabulous experiences too, but this was just something extra.
I remember a night just like this, Meg. Of course, when you're on an expedition ship and you're going for adventure, you need an adventurous captain. And I remember on this first trip that I did down to Antarctica, we had a German captain, Captain Uli. And he reminded me of Captain Nemo. Anyway, at 1 a.m. in the morning, Captain Nemo made an announcement over the PA system, waking us all up, saying there's a pod of minke whales ahead. So we woke up, we very quickly got into our little fluffy slippers and into our robes, parka over the top because it was cold even at that time of the night. Broad daylight, of course. So here we are up on deck watching these minke whales play, and it was just awesome, awe-inspiring, just incredible. The other good thing was within 2 minutes we had half the crew up there serving hot chocolate and glühwein to keep us warm. So we did that for about an hour, and then we went to bed, and it must have been about 2 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, Captain Uli, was back on the PA system, and he said, it's a beautiful day in Antarctica. Why don't we go for a swim? It's perfect conditions for it. We were down at Deception Island, and I thought, I don't know what he's on, but this didn't sound right. So off we went with our swimsuits underneath, under all this Antarctic gear. We went to the beach, and we went and had a dip. We took our rubber duckies as well, and that was a lot of fun. Luckily, there were hot springs coming out on the beach, so the water was in patches quite warm, but it was just awesome looking around you and seeing icebergs and seeing snow everywhere. And here we are having a dip at 5 o'clock in the morning in Antarctica.
Unbelievable.
Meg, what is hot to book at the moment, with the world being such a much smaller place for us at the moment?
So as I was saying, obviously the Kimberley is a very popular destination for expedition cruising. West Australians are already able to be experiencing that part of the world at the moment, and we're hopeful that with the West Australian border opening sometime soon, we'll all be able to take advantage of some of that amazing cruising down along the Kimberley coast. The other close to home opportunity is the subantarctic islands. So many people would know that if you're wanting to travel to Antarctica, it generally means a long flight across to South America. But the beauty of the subantarctic islands is that they lie south of New Zealand. So it will just mean a short flight across to either Auckland or Christchurch. And the subantarctic islands and the Antipodes are some of the most spectacular scenic parts of the world. The wildlife is incredible. You know, landing on some of the beaches there, you'll have tens of thousands of pairs of penguins, seals as well, of course, and it's literally on our doorstep. So that's another great opportunity, as I say, rather than having to make the long trek to South America.
Yeah, so you get to see all the Antarctic wildlife without the jet lag and without the cold. So sounds a great opportunity.
The other thing I think that people perhaps are not aware of is that the subantarctics are probably some of the least visited islands in the world. I mean, obviously very few people have the ability to travel to Antarctica each season, but even fewer go to the subantarctics. So another great opportunity for people. So one thing we haven't touched on is the cost of cruising and doing an expedition voyage. So,
well, Meg, I think it's really interesting when you compare brochure prices or look at pricing on a website. Expedition cruising will always be more expensive than the big ships. Smaller ships will always be more expensive than the big ships, because even though you're on a ship that's much smaller, you still need a captain, you still need the same crew, you need the officers to make this all run and run properly. So it will always be a little bit more expensive than regular cruising. But the expedition ships are often all-inclusive. So that means you do go to the bar, you do not have to sign the check for your glass of champagne. All the meals are of course included, but it gets even better because all your shore excursions are also part of your package. So we call them actually not shore excursions, we call them landings. So when you land on one of these beautiful beaches, you know, or going to see 250,000 penguin pairs, there's no extra charge for this. But let me give you an example, Meg. Last year, or 2 years ago, we went to Canada, and we booked on a tour to see the bears, and the tour was 4 hours, and it was kind of a Zodiac tour. The cost was $700 each.
and that's US dollars?
And that was US dollars. So that hits really hard in the pocket, and it turned out doing just a few shore excursions, it ended up costing us more in tours than what we had actually paid for the cruise.
Wow.
So when you're on a small expedition ship, you never really know. You might have one landing a day, you might have 2 or 3 or even 4 landings. So if you add the cost of those tours up, it suddenly starts to become very attractive.
Absolutely. So we're both very passionate about expedition cruising, and we certainly have a lot of clients who also have experienced it firsthand. It's a subject I think we could talk about all night.
Yes.
And
yes.
get lost in all of the amazing adventures available to people. But we are conscious of time. We did think that we'd just take a little look at any questions that people might have posted whilst we've been chatting. I'm not sure if there is anything there that we should perhaps address. We have Kathy standing by, and I know she's already been answering various questions up to this point.
I hope you could hear us better this time around. We've got microphones on tonight. I hope you could understand us better than last week.
Super. All right. So any questions?
Only if Scenic will be doing the Kimberley at any time.
Okay, so there is a question about whether Scenic will be cruising in the Kimberley region. At this point, I haven't seen anything indicating that they will be. The cruise lines that we are aware of cruising in that part of the world, as I say, True North are already back up and operational. Silver Sea and Ponant both have programs in that part of the world, as does Coral Expeditions. But let us look into the issue as to whether Scenic will be cruising in that part of the world, and we'll certainly post a follow-up to that. Okay, fantastic. So what can people look forward to here on Connections next week?
What's on next week? Well, we're going to have a change of faces. Meg will actually take next Thursday off, and instead our co-director Clive Heath will come on board with me, and we will be talking about our exciting heritage train journeys. These are great country escapes, and they're very close to home, so probably the first travel opportunity that will open up for us. There's some truly amazing heritage rail journeys with some really bespoke activities that will enhance the experience. There's obviously amazing food, lots of wine, exclusive dinners in vineyards, and talks by winemakers. But we also meet the people behind the scenes. For example, a lavish lunch at Piccolo Farm. This is a family-run orange orchard, and they have us over for lunch, and it is the most brilliant afternoon you could ever have.
That sounds so interesting. I'll be tuning in. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed Happy Hour with us again on this Thursday evening. If you do have any further questions, please add them below in the comments box and we'll be sure to get back to you. Clive and Hardy will look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Until then, stay safe.
And here's cheers. It's Happy Hour.
Cheers, everybody.
Be safe. Cheers.
Bye for now.